Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, September 12th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the New York City mayoral race, Zohran Mamdani leading in the most recent New York Times Siena College poll. Mamdani, who starts out with 46% support going into the final 2 months of this campaign season. Trailing him, Andrew Cuomo at 24%, Curtis Sliwa at 15%, and incumbent mayor, independent Eric Adams at 9%. An overall very astonishing and strong advantage for Mamdani in this race, one that shows that the Democratic nominee for mayor just simply continues to be unstoppable in this mayoral election, and it doesn't look like anything's changing. Now, we've already seen a lot of speculation around whether or not Eric Adams was going to drop out of the race. But get this, Eric Adams today, sources tell CNN, is bracing for a likely loss, but won't drop out of the race. This has been the case where we have seen that a lot of these candidates who oftentimes find themselves with large egos and an even bigger, and sometimes smaller, backing of support to really show that when they get to elections and when they get to points where they are deciding to run for something or not, Eric Adams is the standard case of, even though he knows he's going to lose, dropping out of the race would be seen as more of a bigger loss as the incumbent mayor, and making that endorsement of Andrew Cuomo might not even work out. What the New York Times Siena College poll is saying, that even in this multi-way race, Mamdani is the clear option. But in a two-way race between Sliwa, Adams, and Cuomo, Mamdani is still the clear option. And that's the problem for a lot of these, Republicans and independents, and even some Democrats who oppose Mamdani in the mayoral election, that his support is so real and entrenched that when you assess it and find, even if you're skewing the election whatever direction, what if it's the Republican, what if it's the former Democratic governor, what if it's the former Democratic mayor, 1-on-1, 3-on-1, 2-on-1, Mamdani still wins. And I think this shows that we've seen from the beginning, Mamdani was always underestimated in this election. Looking at the polling data too, it's no secret that leading up to the New York City mayoral primary, Mamdani was set to lose this election. The best poll he saw was from Emerson College, right up here in Boston actually, that had done their poll that found that Mamdani would win the final round by 5 points. They were laughed off the market. Every other poll had said that Cuomo would win by at least 12, up to 24 points, and in some cases, win outright in the first round. But guess what? Not only did that not happen, it exposed vulnerabilities in the polling that had been conducted in New York City that even calls into question some of the very same polls today, because what we have found is that they actually consistently underestimate Mamdani by every metric. If that's the case, Mamdani's lead will likely be significantly more. But let's take this poll back at face value. Let's assume they've had months to correct their methodologies, and the New York Times and Siena College have released a poll that show this result that is indicative of what we could expect on Election Day. Well, let's explore exactly why Mamdani holds what they dub a huge lead. It isn't just vibes. Believe it or not, Mamdani has a lot more that voters really latch onto, and 1 in 4 of his primary voters in 2025 had never voted in a Democratic primary before. And so it's not as if this was a presidential, Senate, congressional. This was a mayoral election in an off year under a Republican president and in a safe blue city. We saw massive turnout in favor of Mamdani that led him to victory in the primary election. But getting back to this point, answering that question, why, and why? Well, a lot of it has to do with a lot of the issues. When people ask and are asked about affordability, they are given the list of candidates and they say, which of the following mayoral candidates do you think would do the best job on each of the following issues? Just 10% on affordability say Adams, just 13% say Curtis Sliwa, and less than a fourth of voters say Andrew Cuomo. But nearly 50% come out and say Mamdani. Let's talk about housing. 46% say Mamdani, 24% say Cuomo, 16% say Sliwa, and just 11% say Adams. Looking at these data points, affordability and housing are huge issues. But let's continue. On taxes, Mamdani leads. On dealing with the Trump administration, Mamdani leads. And get this one. On crime, Mamdani leads. not the Republican, and not Andrew Cuomo, and certainly not Eric Adams, but Mamdani on crime. And on the one that I think really does in. A lot of the talking points about Mamdani and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we find that as the question was asked, 43% of New York City voters say Mamdani would handle this issue best, with the next runner-up not being Cuomo, but don't know/did not say at 21%. Of the known entities of the issues ranging from affordability to crime to the Trump administration to housing to taxes and spending to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we have found that on every metric, it is Mamdani who pulls ahead. And that explains Mamdani has an edge with all racial groups, leading Cuomo amongst black voters, leading more amongst Hispanic voters, leading amongst Asian American voters. You have found here that, 60% of likely voters say Mamdani is inspirational, has good character, and cares about people like them. And if you could not find a better blueprint for the Democratic Party, maybe not rent freezes nationwide would win you a presidential election. And I'm not trying to argue that. But as we say on these issues, Mamdani does well in New York City, where Democrats outnumber Republicans 6-1. On the national stage, your policies absolutely should look different. But in terms of the way people are receiving Mamdani's authenticity and the way they feel like he cares about them and the way they have not felt that any politician has cared about them in a very long time, Mamdani answers that question. And that's why he does so well. It has never been lost on me, and I think many of you guys who watch these videos, that even if you don't agree with every talking point that Mamdani has, you see why he is so appealing. You see why voters look at his social media and say, that's the guy I want for mayor. Why they listen to a rally with him, AOC, and Bernie Sanders, and even the most center-lib, the type of Democrat you would see going to Welcome Fest and being on the staff of Senator Elissa Slotkin, might still find themselves in Camp Mamdani because of the way at which he carries himself and conveys messaging. It's very appealing for Democrats to try to do this, and yet not many of them can do it right. And this is a perfect case study of how someone who everybody said was just this online candidate and his support could not translate to votes, not only did it do it once when it shocked the nation, it's doing it again. And this time by massive, massive amounts. Can you imagine if, all of this had been very different? If Cuomo had won this primary, the think pieces on it would have been that Mamdani could never even climb to be in a position where people should learn from his tactics. But now we're at this point where there is this continuous spin on the data that if X person drops out and doubles their support and then adds in this and Trump appoints Adams to his cabinet and then boosts Cuomo on Truth Social and X, Y, and Z, then Mamdani will lose. But no. Every data point, every section, every question, every time this is up for deliberation, Mamdani, 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 and that is the nature of this election that Mamdani has built for himself. February 1st of 2025, what did his data say? 1% in the polls. If you knew, you knew. If you didn't, you didn't. I guess you didn't know, right? Same vibes. I remember when he announced. I loved the bodega-esque type branding. I have an infatuation for political branding and logos, and so I thought that Mamdani was really interesting, but I remember talking about it with my friends. Oh, great campaign, great branding, great videos. But this guy's probably not going to win because voters don't know him, and there's only months to get to know him. But guess what he did? He got to be known. And by the time we had reached, March or May 25th, which is a month before the primary election, Mamdani's chances in the betting markets were very low. They were at a point where I guess all of a sudden this is going to disappear on us. But you'll find that in that data point, in that Democratic primary, it was back in May, where Mamdani was not in a great position. His chances of becoming mayor were less than 5%. You find it the same exact thing on Kalshi. And so looking at, what this data is saying is that the support is very strong and there's reasons for it. Voters really like Mamdani, and we're even seeing it. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Translating into potential congressional bids. for people like Brad Lander, because we saw that that representative did not endorse Mamdani. It is a very interesting dynamic right now. Mamdani is running politics in New York City, and everyone, and I mean everyone, from Trump to Cuomo to Adams to Sliwa to everyone, is trying to bring him down. But yet, the data is consistent, and the data is clear. Mamdani is at 46% in the New York City mayoral race and will likely win this election come November. Because this lead in any other type of race would have been called yesterday. A 22-point advantage in preliminary polling. And even in, as I said, New York Times did do this question of, if it was 1-to-1, who would you support? Well, sure, it would be much closer, because then you're 1-to-2, and it's practically two Democrats running against each other. But you have Cuomo still trailing Mamdani. Even with all of that Republican support and all of those independents and some of those disaffected Democrats that felt like Mamdani was not right for them in the primary, even then, Mamdani still leads. And against Eric Adams, that lead expands to significantly more. And so really, I think we are at a point where we are starting to really understand and unpack why Mamdani is doing so well, and really just understand, generally speaking, what we can expect to see come November of 2025. And I think it has been clear from the primary, and since then onward, that Mamdani is tapping into something new and tapping into an electorate that might not even be captured in these polls. And I wouldn't be shocked if yet again Mamdani outperforms the data as is, just as he did in the Democratic primary and just as he may do in this general election. The New York Times Siena College poll, as one of the best rated pollsters in the state, is finding that Mamdani's lead is exactly what we expected it to be, if not slightly more. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2025 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.